You should be live.
Yes, since broadcast is live, yeah. Yeah, it says it's live.
Okay, so we should be in now. Take a peek, and let me know. Okay.
Yeah, say live.
Okay, great. Well, today is actually our. Okay, I'll talk to you later. Bye. Today is actually our 1 year anniversary. We've been running the show since last year, starting in August. I think it was August 1st was the inaugural date of the show. So that in itself is an accomplishment. We may be having Congressman Davis on today, but we have an astute guest, director, actor, Westside resident. Goes by the name of Tay Wilson, Deontay Wilson, and he's going to be talking about his documentary, Westside Stories, and a few others, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, well, it's a series. So far, done 3 installments and working on the 4th.
That's right. I think you're going to show us a few clips of what you're doing, or you want to elaborate a little more on what's going on?
I got a teaser queued up. I'll figure out how to share it.
Okay.
But yeah, let me see.
Let's give a brief introductory, if you don't mind. Give a little background of yourself.
Let me see. I grew up in Lawndale. Went to school at St. Agatha. It was my home parish, and was very fortunate being connected to St. Agatha, the SAFE program, St. Agatha Family Empowerment Program. Eventually, some philanthropists, I guess you could say, put some money together, moved me and my family out of the city, and helped me get a relatively decent education, and with the express purpose of working on myself and trying to come back to this community to, do some good. And this is my contribution. Westside Stories is a collection of narratives centering on the history and the plight of the people who live here. An attempt to, I guess, in the broadest sense, to answer the question, how did we get to where we are? I mean, the communities of the West Side, in particular, Lawndale, Austin, West East Garfield Park. I mean, we all know that we have a number of challenges that we face here. And there is a sort of general impression as to what this side of town represents for the city of Chicago as a whole. And so that's a narrative that I'm trying to contribute to the changing of, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know. It's an attempt by a Black storyteller to tell Black stories. And I think, that's something that I preach as an artist, as, just a storyteller in general, that Black people need to tell our own stories. Clearly we don't exist in a vacuum, but for far too long, the story of us has been filtered through other people's perspectives. And so this is a way of reclaiming that oral history, if you will, that goes all the way back to, to the motherland.
So West Side Stories, it's a series of stories and documentaries.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest one that you worked on was actually
Yeah. The last installment was the third installment was called Paradise Lost.
okay.
And yeah, that was a really sort of labor intensive project. You mentioned Congressman Davis. He appears in that one. So does Alderman Michael Scott Jr. Well, I guess former Alderman Michael Scott Jr. now.
Right.
But yeah, again, that only scratched the surface of addressing some of the root causes behind the challenges that we face here.
Didn't you document much of the what they call the Great Migration?
Sure.
The second Great Migration, which most people don't realize
Realize
was
it was
actually the second Great Migration.
Some people argue that there were three waves.
Yeah,
Actually.
yeah, it possibly be
Yeah.
the three waves
But
of the Great Migration.
the second wave is certainly the one that my grandparents came up here during, and I think the same could probably be said for a lot of folks.
So, for many of us that may not know what the Great Migration is was actually when many of the blacks from the South migrated up to the North for better opportunities and jobs and housing and what have you.
If I'm not mistaken,
Go ahead.
the largest movement of an ethnic group of people within a country in human history. So scores, millions of African Americans, between 1918 and 1960, moving from the South into the industrial North, looking for jobs and opportunities. Right.
And when you say there were three waves, can you really kind of pinpoint the era or the decade when there were actually three waves?
Sure. So the first wave, I think, was toward the tail end of the First Great War, and the second wave after the Second Great War, and then that third wave happened up into the early 1970s. But that was trickling off at that point, and now we're seeing sort of a reverse migration with a lot of black people in the North kind of fed up with some of the challenges that a lot of northern cities face, and they're going back to the South.
And would you say they're older or younger?
Younger folks.
Yeah. It seems to be. Yeah, many of them are younger. The older people have already migrated and settled in. They don't really want to go back.
Yeah.
Unless they really could, see a clear future, I guess.
Yeah.
But you're right. It's probably more like the great grandchildren of the people that migrated last. But there's a point where you talk about in your documentary the West Side and the South Side when it comes to Great Migration. Can you elaborate a little bit about that?
Sure. So in I guess what you would call the first wave of the Great Migration, this is, the years leading up to World War I. A number of African Americans migrated to the North from industrial centers in the South. And so when they came to Chicago in particular, they found a city with, little to no racial segregation. Black people were able to, for the most part, live in relative peace with white neighbors. Black people built black businesses that were patronized by whites. And so there were ample opportunities for Black people to prosper up here. Now, during that second wave,
which was around what year?
which was uh, the mid 1940s into the early 1960s, there was a second group of African Americans migrating to the north, and they came from, primarily rural areas, and they were not accustomed to, um, you know, the sort of freedoms that the Black population that was already established in Chicago sort of enjoyed. And so um, that first Black population established itself, in communities on the north side and the south side of Chicago. And so as the numbers of Black people on the south side of Chicago began to grow, that growth was challenged in any number of ways by white Southsiders who were very uncomfortable with the sort of growing numbers of African Americans on the South Side. And so when that second wave came up here, the South Side was already, arguably overpopulated. And so they started to find a home here on the West Side. And they, of course, met with myriad challenges um, um, during that their attempt to find a home here. And so as white people moved away from the West Side, rather than be neighbors with this new population of Black people, um, the opportunities for housing were more numerous here on the West Side than they were on the South Side. So that second wave was concentrated almost entirely here on the West Side.
And in that second wave, I think we kind of determined the West Siders, their kids eventually moved to the South Side, to the more prominent areas after they became a lot more educated and
Right.
received better jobs, and kind of mixed everything up, between whether most people came from the South at first or the West and landed came from the South at first and landed on the South Side, or came from the South at first and landed on the West Side. But there's a mixed feeling or mixed thought about that. But I think that's what it is, if I'm not mistaken.
Sure, yeah, and that's something that I sort of cover at length in the last installment of West Side Stories, Paradise Lost. It's become part of Chicago's greater story. This idea that Black folks on the West Side, they get a little education, they get a little money, and then they leave the West Side for what is perceived to be, a more sort of affluent way of living in some of the communities on the South Side.
So technically that was a migration in itself, also.
Yeah,
if you think about it.
Intra-city migration, sure.
Intra-city migration, yeah. Well, I mean, the only thing I know that's done is created this whole barrier of West Side Blacks and South Side Blacks,
Sure.
which me being one of the people or groups that came up in a migration, because we moved up in '68, which probably would have been the last migration.
Right. That would have been that third wave.
Yeah, definitely third wave. But I never looked at people like South Side or West Side, because I'm from the South, So it was like, I'm from the South. How does it matter? What does it matter? But we go back and forth. West Siders do this, South Siders do that. Blacks. We talk.
Yeah.
But and I'm sure everybody have heard this over the years. But for me, like I said, all I see are Black people that are in Chicago, because being from the South, that's what you see it. That's how you see it.
Yeah.
I don't see the big difference.
Yeah.
There are things on the South Side that many people all over the city utilize, like the museums and the parks, and even some of the beaches. I'm sure West Siders. I know I used to. I do. I have. So I don't see the big distinction unless you touched them. Have you really touched on that in your?
Yeah, I try to, and um, funny you should mention it. The interview that I did with you
Right,
for
right.
for that installment helped shed a little light on the subject as well. The idea that the primary difference between, if you could draw a distinction between black culture on the South Side,
Mhm.
black culture on the West Side,
Mhm.
is the sense that West Side culture is more closely tied to black people's Southern roots.
Right.
Whereas the culture on the South Side was one built by, primarily urbanized African Americans
That have been there for a little
been there
longer.
and had stopped. Exactly right. But one of the points that is made by I think it was Sister Mary Ellen Beckley in that last installment was that there was a rivalry between the South Side of Chicago and the West Side of Chicago before Black people even populated this city in large numbers.
Really?
There was, South Side Irish versus West Side Irish.
Right.
And the South Side Irish sort of turned their noses, what I'm saying, up at West Side Irish because they were perceived to be, shanty Irish, the lower class Irish. And, unfortunately, that rivalry sort of got recycled
into the black community.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, give a little bit more detail on what you found when you actually dug into the people that were already sitting on the West Side and those that were already sitting or living on the South Side when it came to the Great Migration.
I really would have to echo what you've already said. I don't consider myself to be an especially religious person. I have spiritual convictions. You know what I mean? That are mine and personal, private, whatever. My only religion is Pan-Africanism. All right, I believe that Black people from in Africa and in the Africa diaspora all over the world need to start seeing themselves as one people, one common cause. You know what I'm saying? It is a tragedy that we have drawn so many divisions amongst ourselves. But ultimately, I think it's human nature in a lot of ways. One of the professors that I interviewed for that last installment of West Side Stories mentions what I don't want to ruin it for everybody. Actually, might want to take a look at the thing, but there is a sort of complex that northern established Black people had in those early days of the Great Migration. They got here, they established themselves, and then they immediately turn around and begin to look down on their brothers and sisters who were coming up here looking for the same thing that they found. Like, we got here first, so we're the more cultured, more civilized, you know what I'm saying, African Americans, as opposed, to these low class Negroes who are trying to come up here and get a piece of what we already got.
Right.
You know what I mean? And
it created a Division.
That
Division amongst already divided.
that's an attitude that exists not just here in Chicago, but in every northern city. Um, of of which the Great Migration is a part of its story. Um, and yeah, and like I said, it's tragic. I think we would get a lot further as a community if we try to tear those walls down.
Right. Let me see. Someone, can you guys? Are you able to hear us? Right? You guys hearing the story? I hope you are. No sound. What do you mean no sound? Hold on. You went through all that.
Come on now.
I know, right? Somebody heard me. Wait a minute. 'Cause I heard somebody speaking. Who was speaking a minute ago? Hello. Can you hear? Can you guys hear me? I heard Dan earlier. Can everybody hear us? Dan, can you hear me? Everybody hear me?
Now I have sound.
Okay.
Well,
Well,
I have sound.
Oh God.
Now I have sound.
yeah, I know. Show your mic.
Mhm.
Can you get?
Testing.
No, StreamYard is open. I think the speaker wasn't on, but I heard somebody earlier. Yeah, the Bluetooth. Okay. Yeah. So let me be clear. Well, let me just say. So you guys did hear us talk a little bit about the Great Migration, correct?
We can hear you. We can't hear Steve.
You can't hear.
This
Okay.
sounds only good on YouTube.
Ah.
You. We can't hear you.
How about now?
We can't hear you on Zoom.
You cannot?
Steve?
Yeah,
Okay, hold on. Let me see if I can.
it sounds way better on YouTube.
What about now? Can you hear us now?
It sounds way better on YouTube.
No, that's creating echoes. Over there, it's on, right?
We can hear you, Steve, but we hear like echo.
Okay, what about now? Is it okay? Hello? Zoom and mute is not on. Audio leave studio is good. Call Dr. Dre. He said, call Dr. Dre. Okay, wait a minute. Is that one? That one is on, right?
I
Can you just
honestly
look over
have no idea.
Look all. Let me see. Hold on. Let me check. No, this is my question.
Which one?
Oh, that's why this one is off. On. It's blocked. There it is. Okay. That one was blocked. Oh, they will listen to us on the other. These people are here to hear us. Okay, how about now? Everybody can hear us? Hello?
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay, that's good. So, did you hear us introducing our guest today? Director, actor,
No. Not on Zoom.
Deontay Wilson. Well, we're gonna give you a brief reintroduction.
Okay.
So go ahead, Deontay.
All right.
A brief, because he's gonna show us some clips. Go ahead, do your thing.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we can.
Excellent. Thank you. My name is Deontay Wilson. I'm an award-winning playwright, filmmaker. Born and raised in North Lawndale, and West Side Stories is my contribution to, our telling of the story of our community. Simple as that.
Okay. And we were just touching base on some of the on what actually the Great Migration was or is and has been, meaning that there were actually three waves of people that migrated from the south to the north for better opportunities, and they stretched from the early 1900s, and it kind of branched out from World War One, and then World War Two again, and then the late 60s and early 70s was probably the last wave. But we started talking about how inside the city of Chicago, where there's a West Side group of blacks and there's a South Side group of blacks, how there's been a division almost amongst them, and how people actually migrated from the West to the South, meaning that the last group of people that came up from the South that moved to the West Side because I guess there was probably less opportunity out South. Their children eventually became educated and became, had better jobs, and then they thought moving to the South Side was better for them. Um, what was the last part? I forgot the last part we left off.
No, I
That was
think
it.
you covered it pretty good. Yeah,
So, you want to take any questions right now, or you want to?
sure.
Is Does anyone on the Zoom have any questions? I'm getting a bunch.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you why you think it's more like I understand the migration and more opportunity. Everything is mostly on the south side, like Hyde Park, anything like they believe in there. African American, the businesses are booming there, and then the west side is just like dry. I mean, it's like night and day. And like you said, if they got educated, a lot of them moved to the south side, but now currently a lot of people moving to the west suburbs or from the west side when opportunities come. Are you seeing that at all
Absolutely.
transpiring?
Absolutely. I think a number of questions about why Chicago in general is the way it is can be answered in short by that's the way Mayor Richard J. Daley wanted it to be. And so you have to take a look at the history of the Chicago political establishment. The vast majority of mayors and the city's most powerful politicians came from that sort of Irish cabal on the South Side. And um, Mayor Daley's plan for revitalizing Chicago was primarily centered on the downtown area and areas of the South Side. When that urban renewal money first started coming down from the United States, from the government, from the federal government, at the end of World War II, after World War II, Daley got his hands on that urban renewal money and steered it toward communities on the South Side, primarily places like Hyde Park. And so there is nothing written or recorded that I could point you to because Mayor Daley was real good about sort of quietly going about his business without, really telling people what it was that he was doing.
Mhm.
But it would seem that the West Side was to be the sort of stopgap, the designation for people who were impoverished, who were displaced by freeway construction. This is where they were sort of designated. This was their designated landing spot, according to that Daley's plan for Chicago.
So you're saying the man-made landmarks kind of isolated people into restricted areas?
Yeah,
Mm. Yeah, I could. Well, we kind of know and see that as it is today. I mean, where there are viaducts and train overpasses and expressways, as you said,
yeah,
people tend to live and relegate. right around on opposite sides. And you're right. The neighborhoods changed
Yeah.
by those man-made landmarks.
Yeah. The West Side is kind of like you're an engineer, Steve. It's like the safety valve. You know what I'm saying? Release to relieve the pressure. You know what I'm saying? And so this is where, you know, that pressure in the city sort of dissipates.
Because you're right. When you think about public housing, the majority of the public housing was mostly out south. Maybe because of more population and to house more people. I mean, we have our share on the west side, or had, but there was mostly two locations: Henry Hornets and Rockwell Gardens. Rockwell Gardens, yeah. And then we, of course, which people from Cabrini Greens. It always makes me laugh when you ask people from Cabrini Greens where they're from, and they would always say we're from the northwest side,
right?
Because they still wanted to be attached to the west side. They would never say north side. They would say we're from the northwest side. And I thought that was a special thing that they always wanted to be attached to. But yeah. Go ahead.
It's the essential question of not just Chicago, but of this whole nation from the start, is what is to be done with these black people. You know what I mean?
Mm.
After slavery was over, you know what I'm saying? What is to be done with them? You know, people like Abraham Lincoln never thought white America would open their arms and accept us as equal. You know what I'm saying? And so, I mean, you mentioned like the projects on the South Side.
Mm-hmm.
There was nowhere else to put, you know, these growing numbers of black people. And when you don't want them to expand outward, you know, somebody had the brilliant idea to expand them upward. You know what I'm saying? And so it was just, you know, just a way to stockpile black people who the system did not know what to do with.
Mm-hmm. I'm just reading a little bit. Dan was saying, we're West Side Irish, etc. Well, come on, Dan. Say what you want to say. Can you hear me? Dan, are you there? Well, anyway, he was saying that we're West Side Irish, etc. Also understood back when there was white South Irish cutting resources to the west side. So I guess that he was saying the whites. Well, exactly what you said. The white Irish from the south side were going against the west side Irish.
Yeah, they looked down on them and thought of them as you know, shanty Irish people with you know, lesser class. You know what I'm saying? Lower class. Yeah, Irish people, and that was in many ways the origin of the West versus South side rivalry.
So it's like, what is it? Last in, first. The last people to come in are the first people to be hated.
Right.
Be oppressed.
Right.
Last in, the first oppressed.
Yeah.
And for obvious reasons, you know, like you said, the whole machine politics of daily, you know, for over, oh man, if you include the son, 60, 70 years almost.
Man, one of the best books on just politics in general that I've ever read was that old Mike Royko book, Boss, you know, about Richard Daley. And in the earlier chapters, Royko spends, you know, a number of pages discussing like the history of nepotism in, you know, Chicago and Illinois politics. And, you know, Richard J. Daley, you know, eventually, you know, being that seat eventually being filled by Richard M. Daley, it's just another iteration in that sort of system of nepotism.
Mhm.
Fathers pass their job down onto their son, or you know cousins, what I'm saying, like occupy, the same department for generations. It's just how it's done here.
Right. But there I'm saying you guys mentioned the West Side Story is a little bit of extension, origin of the start of the worst treatment of blacks folks folks later. I think that's what he's saying. It's kind of smart. I gotta blow it up. But I don't think go into a little bit of the West Side Story that the documentary. That's what I think he's touching base on.
Oh, sure, sure. So so I've done 3 installments so far. The last one was volume 3, called Paradise Lost. Um, an attempt to, like I mentioned earlier, when I don't think anybody could hear, um, an attempt to answer in the broadest terms, you know, how did we get to where we are? Um, for years, I would hear stories from older people in my family about what Lawndale, in particular, because that's my community. Um, what Lawndale was like in the 50s and 60s. You know, we had Sears, right there adjacent to the community, General Electric. There were tons of opportunities here for people to, work and provide a good life for their families. You know, even aesthetically, people would tell stories about, you know, houses being well kept with front lawns, and children playing in the streets with no fear of violence or nothing
Public
like that.
safety, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? How did we get from there to here? And so Paradise Lost was supposed to be the first in a 2 installment arc addressing that. Volume 4, which is practically done, was called Fire Sale, to discuss, you know, the 66 and the 68 riots,
Mm.
that sort of last wave of white flight, um, the the death of Martin Luther King and the riots being the sort of tide turning mark between what was a paradise and what has become, like I mentioned, a collection of communities with a number of challenges. Um, I wanted to tell in the 4th installment, which is to be called Fire Sale, wanted to tell the story of um, fair housing, or I guess unfair housing, and predatory real estate practices that, in a sense, created the ghetto, to use a very problematic term.
Mm.
But the estimated $5.5 billion worth of equity that was sucked out of the West Side communities through, contract sales, and redlining. You know what I mean? Um, and how that robbed us of the resources we needed to reinvest,
Mhm.
in our communities. Um, and the sort of scarred landscape that we still live with, that is, part of, the legacy left us of from the turbulent 60s, and how that physical scarring in a lot of ways represents, the spiritual scarring of our people. You know, that was supposed to be um, installment 4. But I ran into a bit of a snag. I really didn't want to release it without an interview from um, one of those predatory lenders back in the day. I wanted to interview a Blockbuster. If you all are familiar with, the term blockbusting, was basically white realtors scaring white people, with the threat of black neighbors into selling their houses way cheaper than market value, and then turning around and, you know, essentially selling those houses or renting them to incoming black people, for 3 and 4 times the value,
Mhm.
you know.
Or the mortgages, or holding the mortgages.
Right, right. And that's where we would get into, contract sales. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying?
So blockbusting, white flight, and contract
Contract
sales.
sales. That was supposed to be installment 4, fire
Right,
sale.
right.
What I was looking for was an interview with a white blockbuster. Okay. And if just do the math, blockbusting back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, there can't be that many of those guys left around. They are all, anyone still left around in their
Right.
80s and 90s. But I found one.
Okay, okay.
This guy, I'm gonna say his name. His name is Rosario LaPiccolo. Okay.
Mhm.
And he is one of the last blockbusters who are still living, and he is actually still working in Chicago
Real
right
estate.
now. He's employed by I'm just putting the man's business all out on the street, but he's employed by Berkshire Hathaway real estate company, which I assume is part of Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway Holdings company. But he's still in real estate with them, a part of their outfit. I did a ton of research
Right.
to try and find this guy, and I dug up a bunch of court documents, filings from back in the day. He bounced around, like, working for several real estate companies, all doing the same stuff. Like, he was indicted, he lost his license,
Wow.
and he just kept reinventing himself. You know what I'm saying?
Change the name.
Changed his
Right.
name. You know what I'm saying? Changing company names, changing his name from Rosario LaPiccolo to Russell LaPiccolo. Anyway, I tracked this guy down, and I figured a call from me would probably scare him off. And so I have some ladies that I work with who attend St. Francis Xavier in LaGrange. They're one of St. Agatha's sharing parishes. And so, they've been, helping me a bit along the way. So she called them instead, and they established, a pretty good rapport. And
Right.
it seemed like he was going to do the interview so long as he could do it with her.
Right. Right.
I try to play the background as much as possible, but in the end, he got spooked. You know what I'm saying? And he decided he didn't want to do it, and which is not surprising, man. I mean, the guilt, the embarrassment. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Of what it was he he participated in and contributed to. What we see now. I'm not surprised he didn't want to sit on camera and own that.
Yeah. It kind of your documentary opened my eyes to a lot of things. I remember in the late '80s, I was probably about 22 years old, and I was working with a Greek guy. He's much older, probably in his 50s or 60s, late 60s, and he said, "Yo, man, the West Side, look what happened. The blacks left this all and made it like this." And I said, "No. If you lived on the West Side, you left it like this,
Right.
because we don't want bad communities. We don't want blighted communities. You left it to be like that. You didn't have to do what you did." And I said that at like 22 years old, not even knowing that's what happened.
That's what happened.
I was just, saying something, because he came out of this whole bag about, oh, look how it looks. And I used to know a person over here, and I'm like, but you used to. What happened? you made it, you left it like that. You know, it's like that for everybody. Everybody wants good, safe communities, good schools, and good housing. Why would you think people want it back? And the other part of the documentary that people don't realize, when whites left these properties only had a 40-something year shelf life.
Yes,
a lot of these
sir.
properties had been built in the
Yes, sir.
1800s.
Yes,
And,
now
and nobody realizes that they left it
you
because they couldn't get money to fix it themselves.
you hit the nail on the head. Now, this again is something that was going to be / is, if I can find a replacement for this LaPiccolo guy, going to be covered in the 4th installment. Okay,
Mhm.
buildings in America are only built to last for about 50 years. Okay, all right. They need upkeep. They
Right.
need rehabbing. You know what I'm
Of
saying?
course. Especially if they're framed.
Especially.
Right.
Okay, so these buildings on the west side had been around since the late 1800s. Okay, so what happens during the second wave of the Great Migration? The Great Depression happens. There's no money
Right.
to reinvest in, dilapidated buildings
Right.
distressed communities. All right. So after we start climbing out of the Great Depression, in large part thanks to World War II,
Mhm.
making bombs and planes and
Going into another war.
and rebuilding Europe after it was over. You know what I mean? When the economic situation in this country began to turn, the government then had money, to reinvest in cities. Okay. And that's where the urban renewal money
Right.
came from. Okay. And so there were battles all over Chicago. Every community is trying to get their hands on urban renewal money,
Right.
including communities here on the west side. Okay. One of the things that I think was West Garfield Park community desperately wanted was for UIC to be built over there.
Mm.
Okay. And so they campaigned. I think the movement was led by this Italian woman named Florence Scholar. And they were petitioning City Hall to build UIC right over here.
Mhm.
I mean, we see eventually where it got built, what I'm saying? But all of that urban renewal money, Daley had no plans of sharing with the west side.
Right.
Daley was the south side. And so Daley wanted to revitalize downtown and the south side. So that's where that urban renewal money went.
That was the first expressway. It was the Dan Ryan, right? So we're right there. That was the beginning of it. So does anyone have any questions? You want to go to some questions, or you want to show a little bit of what you got?
So I have to set it up first.
Okay. So before while he's setting up, does anyone have any questions regarding this whole issue of the Great Migration, West Side Stories, and how it actually affects us today in the way we live, how we live, and where we live? Questions? Anybody from the Zoom? Questions? How about let's see. Dan, you got any questions?
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, indeed. Go for it.
Okay. This is interesting to me because my family grew from a white family. I'm a white guy. For people online, we've been at Stony Island Avenue, South Chicago Avenue, Lightel family since 1929.
Oh yeah.
And then my family was part of I'm okay talking about it. Unlike the guy you tried to introduce. You try to find some of the grandsons and granddaughters of that guy you were trying to contact because they could tell you.
Yep.
Might be a little more open.
Yep.
So my family, the Lightel family, was part of the white flight to the south suburbs, and they left behind the brownstones in the Stony Island Avenue, South Chicago Avenue area for my family. and that drove the value of those homes down, was based on that, and fear of black folks. And then I heard those stories growing up, so is hopefully a little better than my ancestors trying to make a difference about that. That's interesting. How could you do something about that? It's one of the concerns I have now. And then I didn't know about the West Side Irish and the South Side Irish. I'm Irish and German and Austrian. So it was interesting to hear about that part of it. And then how, it was even worse on the West Side because it was already under-resourced.
Yes.
And it just got even worse when black folks moved in. Whereas the South Side seems to have some more resources. Not to say that there wasn't really big times for under-resourced in the South Side, of course, right? After that white flood especially. So that was good for me to know about why there's a difference between the West Side and the South Side for both the Irish context and then later on for black folks. So thanks for that.
My pleasure.
For sure, Dan.
You got to keep in mind that just by virtue of being black, being black alone is enough to, sorry to say, but scare some white people. Okay. Go back to when Sears was a major player in this community. When between Sears and Western Electric, there were 100,000 jobs
Motorola
available.
also.
You see what I'm saying? Available to black people. When the demographics on the west side of Chicago shifted, there were tons of internal murmurings in the Sears Corporation. Their workers didn't want to work in what they now considered a bad neighborhood. They had to start busing white people through Lawndale to work, busing them out. And eventually, it's actually part of an interesting story. This is another thing that I don't have any paperwork or any documents that I can refer you to. This was more than likely one of those backroom deals. Okay, all right. But in the late 60s, Sears had virtually given up the fight to get urban renewal money here on the west side. Now, Sears had a completely different calculation than some of the other community groups that were hoping to get, that urban renewal money here. They wanted to, for instance, like, this organization, the Northwest Austin Council, has its roots in an organization that was lobbying for urban renewal money so that they could repair the housing here and make it too expensive for black people to live here. Sears had the exact same plan. They wanted to essentially gentrify the burgeoning black population out of the west side of Chicago. They did not get that urban renewal money. Instead, I think a backroom deal was struck. Sears gets the Sears Tower downtown. They wanted to move out. They either wanted the urban renewal money or they were going to move out of Chicago altogether. So I think the political establishment sat down with the upper management at Sears and said, okay, we got other plans for that urban renewal money. but we'll build you a Sears Tower if you stay here in Chicago. You don't have to stay on the West Side, in that Negro neighborhood, but we'll build you the Sears Tower instead. And I think that's the deal that was struck.
Yeah.
Wow, that really sucks. Was there any companies that were on the west side that the demographics of their employees
Didn't affect them, didn't bother them?
employees matched the demographics of the west side? Because that's kind of a metric. I work in the museum science industry. You walk in there, and I'm always shocked at how many white office workers we have compared to the demographics of the area, right? That's not right. It should match the community that business is located in at least.
Yeah.
And were there any companies at all that actually, unlike Sears?
Brock's Candy Factory on the west side.
Okay.
Brock's Candy Factory was a big one, right off of Kilpatrick and Lake Street for years.
Yeah.
Well, there's a way you can pressure current companies that still don't stand up to that, about that history, right? Like, there's these examples of these companies like Brock's who did something about it. And then this lost opportunity with Sears. Why did that happen? There was some movement in that back room deal happened.
I think Deontay was kind of brewing on something when he said the organizations, when he brought up the Northwest Austin Council. Now, if you look slightly behind him, you'll see this organization was founded in 1972. And if I can recall, blacks weren't even living past Augusta or Chicago Avenue in 1972. They were just kind of, relegated below Chicago Avenue. And I always tell people, the mission statement of the Northwest Austin Council was to empower people around the issues of public safety, housing, and education. Now, why is that? Why were they really concerned about public safety in 72 and before? Why were they really concerned about education and housing before? Because they didn't want the influx of blacks that were moving to take over and cause an unsafe community, blighted housing, and a weaker educational system. That's the only thing I can equate it to, because living should have been good, And then, like you said, urban renewal and all of that was kicking in. And it wasn't just Northwest Austin Council, because they created an umbrella of organizations on the west side. They created SAC, South Austin Coalition Community Council. They created NAO, Northeast Austin Organization. They created Mid-Austin, and all these organizations were under one umbrella at one time. And if I can recall from all of the stories, most of them had some political ties that got them kicked in and started. And I think it was to deviate away from, like you said, getting that money for urban renewal, because it's like, we're going to put the pot down here, and then, you white people that are out there, you just have to bite the bullet. And of course, we see how things went, or are. Let's see, someone has a comment. We built the project.
It's still happening, though. It's still happening, Steve, because now what they're doing is putting for Section 8 way out in Timbuktu.
Exactly.
Moving out of the community, and they put them way out like in Rockford and
yeah.
I mean,
DeKalb County and
no resources.
Right. I mean, that's actually, you're right. That's actually what's going on now. Many people are looking at Section 8 and subsidized housing that's been put out, I want to say past Kane County, what is it? What's past Cook County? DePage?
Yeah,
they doing DuPage. They doing Hanover Park for the cap on it, because they're sending so many people there. Right. Hanover Park stopped taking Section 8.
Wow. But it's we live it every day, but we don't realize why it happened and why is it happening as we speak, and why what could we have done to make it better and change the direction, the trajectory where it's at. I always tell people, for myself, being involved with Northwest Austin Council, I have a lot at stake, because I have property in the boundaries of the organization. So, the public safety is number one to me. The schools are number one to me, although I don't have kids in there, but I want to make sure that there's good quality schools. And I also want to make sure that, the housing stock is good. Because if the housing stock is great, then it's good for me and my property also. But, I tell people all the time, we got to be selfish in the right ways. And if you want to be selfish about your community. Be selfish about your property. Be selfish that we can work together and secure.
I kind of see this pattern if you step back overall with the United States, kind of like related to imperialism maybe, where we like to go into a country.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go back. Unmute, man. Unmute. I think I unmuted. My mistake. Dan, unmute yourself. Because I heard some background noise. Let me find them. Hold on. Dan, we can't hear you. Go ahead. You got to unmute.
Yeah, you got to finish that analogy, man.
Hold on. Let me get them. I'm just trying to scroll around here.
See, like you muted or somebody muted who can't hear anything.
Yeah. That was Dan. I think I hit.
Pattern with
Go ahead, Dan.
Yes, please.
That is related to imperialism maybe of the United States, where we go into another country and take their mining resources or the resources and make all the profits, send it back to the United States, and don't give anything to those people. All the way down to the programs we run at the museum, where we start with a program that has I have a program that's 100% black, the high school students around the area, but then white, middle-class resource-seeking folks start taking that program over by getting their kids into that program. Donors try to get their kids into the program. And then the same thing that Eddie talked about earlier, wherever there's resources, white people come and take them, push everybody else aside. Kind of when I step back, I see that pattern over and over again. How do we stop that cycle? At the museum, you have to really push hard back at the bureaucracy and the upper administration and tell them what's happening and tell them you will not do that. We don't allow people from outside our community there. Like she says, people selfish. That's part of it too. Make sure that we push against these resource seekers taking over these programs. I don't know, it's a tough one, but I've been thinking a lot about it.
Right. Someone said the pattern of privilege.
Well, it's the same way with housing, though. It's like properties abandoned and a lot of lots, vacant lots. If you look up the names, it's people that don't live in the community holding these lots. That's holding these lots until they can develop. It's just crazy. I'm seeing a lot of that. So I just investigate lots, and that's what I found out. A lot of lots are held by people that don't live in the community, but holding lots until opportunity comes to the development of the community. But they just sit on these lots.
They're waiting for that next wave of gentrification.
Part Irish only. I hate the Dailies. Sorry, but in my family won't agree with me. It's really messed up. I'm so glad you talked about that legacy of that, how much power that brought. The way they control the media, just shut the media up so that, it's just amazing how powerful they were and how bad it was.
Well, they just start crumbling recently because one of the dailies just got indicted just a few months back. That was an alderman. I think he was a nephew or so.
Yeah, I think you might be talking about John Patrick.
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah. But they still got a stronghold in Bridgeport. Yeah. Bridgeport. They still got a little stronghold, I believe. Any other questions?
I think so.
I lost audio. Did you guys lose audio too?
No.
Yeah, Steve, we can't hear you.
You can't hear?
On Zoom.
Check that over there. See if that one's still on. Okay, hold on. Is it? Audio.
Are you on mute?
No.
Mute people on Zoom or you have it on mute somehow?
Yeah, that was on mute.
It was on mute? I don't know how it keeps popping to mute. But go ahead.
Can you on mute?
Okay, go ahead. You got any more questions? Anybody? Can you hear?
Hopefully we weren't talking over you. Was that
I know. Did you hear us at all?
Yeah, we heard you. We heard you.
Oh, okay. We wasn't sure.
Yeah.
Like, what?
No, we got you.
You repeat your response because we didn't hear a response at all.
Oh, the only thing I said was that that Bridgeport still has a stronghold It's still Dailies in Bridgeport, and they still got a stronghold on that community. So, it is what it is, as they say. Um, so, any other questions or comments or statements?
I would just say to anybody who owns property on the west side, keep it. Don't sell it for nothing. Because the sister was talking about people who are owning these lots and are just waiting until opportunities come back. There is a plan for the communities of the West Side. Unfortunately, that plan doesn't really include us. Um, and it, in my opinion, we would solve this problem tomorrow if we took all of our money, all of our assets out of whatever, let's be honest, white mainstream banks they currently sit in, put them all into a common pot, and use that money to invest in real estate on this side of town so that we would have a community ownership stake in the land resources of our community. If we did that, the next 20 years, our kids, our grandkids would be rich.
But we have to come together on that.
The thing on the banks ain't no black thing. The only because I was researching black banks for my organization, and we searched, and the only one is I think is out south is the credit union, and some banks that say they're black. If you go under the umbrella of the organization, they are not black. We also researched that.
Yep.
So you will have to really do it. No black thing.
We put our money together and charter ourselves a bank, the community bank of the West Side, whatever.
Credit union.
And then invest in real estate right here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The West Side is the edge, the closest edge. And you see it already. I mean, you see all of these things that they're doing on Chicago Avenue. They're trying to bridge the gap from Austin, where it's already coming down. Gentrification is almost Kedzie now on Chicago Avenue. So you only have 2 miles or more left before you're at the edge of the city, 2 to 3 miles, and that'll be all changed over if we don't do something, to stabilize it with the people that are there. So, any other questions? Anybody? No, someone who has a couple comments. Hey there, Beard. How you doing?
Hey everyone. Somebody just made a proposal about a bank, creating a bank or a credit union or a land trust or something. So it seems to me that when we got a concrete proposal like that, and not detailed, of course, but I'm just wondering how everyone feels about it, and if people like it, then we should in some way mark it down and get compound on.
I hear you. Yeah. I mean, we could do that. We could definitely do that.
I transfer all my money, and there's not much of it, but I transfer whatever money I have into tomorrow.
Or if anybody start with a small amount.
Yeah.
Start with an equal small amount.
We don't have to recreate the wheel. All we got to do is follow One United Bank. But the only problem with One United is located in one place, and they only do business. They'll take your checking and savings, but part of the business account, they only do it in the location there. I think Harlem. One is in Harlem, and one is somewhere else. That's the only way they do business. It's the only black thing. It's huge, but they won't go outside of their territory.
We need one here. We need one right here.
But you don't have to create the wheel if somebody hook up with them and say, how do we create one in Chicago or Illinois? I mean, somebody needs to get on there and, have that know-how and get with them how to collaborate. If you want to bring it to Chicago, I mean, work with it.
Yeah.
there has been a black bank, at least one, on the south side, located something like 45th and King. I forget the name of it, but it was on the east side of the street, like 44th to 43rd King.
Seaway?
No, what's the Seaway? I can look it up.
You mean was it on 35th and King Drive?
No, I don't know, like 43rd and King Drive. On the east side.
It's still one there. It's a credit union there. It's a credit union. That's where you talk, close to where you talk about, but they only do the south side.
Oh, yeah, that could be. But at least you're close to New York City.
Yeah.
Mm. It's New York City is a stretch. What are you talking about?
No, and what's the difference? We're only talking about an account unless we're really talking about a new credit union or a new bank. But that's a whole different kettle of worms.
Mm. Any other questions, comments, concerns about this topic? Because we want to give you a little tidbit of his
What's next to come? Yeah.
Yeah, what's next to come?
Well, Steve, why don't you do a poll?
A poll regarding
Yeah, just, who likes the idea and who does, just how many like the idea.
well, go ahead. Just pose the question, Barry.
Okay. So, let me just think about how to put it. So I think what we're essentially talking about is something like a land trust on the west side, community owned.
Mm-hmm.
And it would be, I'm making this point up because I don't know, and it would be through a bank, let's say the Seaway Bank, if that's the name of that bank.
Hmm.
So, and the question is, how many people like some version of that idea?
Okay.
I think it's a great idea. Probably there's a person, an individual who's putting forth this effort where you want to put your little meager dollars into it. Yeah.
When you would, in some ways, get some reckoning of it. You would either be a part owner or the account or something.
Yeah, because that might be a big point, and I'm scared. This might be a big point that you got to be very careful. That Bitcoin thing, there's some people coming on top of it. Some people get messed up in that Bitcoin thing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think the way to do it is you got to have something more tangible for people. Like if you're going to put your money into this institution, you got to show that there's some land that they have all the names are all tied to it. Where they, if it all goes flop, the land still everybody gets, their portion out.
It's got to be pegged to something with value.
Right.
I think
even if it's the place where they're going to build a bank, whatever.
It's kind of like tethering your currency to a gold supply. You know what I'm saying? Like the value of gold may, fluctuate a little bit, but it's generally pretty stable, and so, tether it to the value of the land here.
Right. It has to be tangible.
Got to be something
that
I can agree with you.
And man,
well, my question is really, yes, we have to work out the details if you like the idea of having something like
I think the general
Why not?
consensus is yes. I mean, unless someone has some opposing ideas, but I think the general consensus would be yes. Let me see. Someone left a comment. Credit union is already in the works. Well, who is it? Who's creating the credit union? Felicia, do you know? You said there's one already in the works. I'm not familiar.
Hello, I haven't heard any updates, but I used to see it in the paper all the time. But
What?
I haven't, can't think of the name, but when I find out, I'll let you know.
Okay, was it through the churches or the ministers or something? Because I kind of heard something like that a while back,
Right.
but I never heard any more.
Yeah, the thing is, you don't hear about the thing that is following through or whatever. Did Live and Run have one? If I remember, the A-Star, they own bank.
You know what? That's a good question. That's a good
Bill
question.
Winston.
Yeah, Bill Winston.
They have one.
They do, but
Yeah,
that they had one. Did they get it back?
it's called, I think it's called Liberty or something like that. Liberty Bank.
Right.
When I looked up Liberty, it had front as a black owned bank, but when I went into deeper in there, for the CEO and the people that were there, they were not black. So I'm hoping that Liberty you're talking about, because when I looked up Liberty, it was no black like CFOs or
Right.
something like that. So twins, just look at the mall. It's located right there in the mall. You don't bring nothing in there unless you have an interest in it.
Okay, so it is in the mall. It used to be one inside of the grocery store, I know, but
Service restaurant.
right. So I mean, the idea sounds like a great idea, but
A lot of details that need
that's
to be worked
yeah.
out. Yeah.
I mean, I can't even begin to tell you. I just don't know. Financial
I mean,
institutions is not my thing.
yeah. I mean, I certainly have people, that I've met over the course of doing this project who would be really good resources and that could sort of fill in some of the gaps. You know what I'm saying? For instance, just recently I met a real estate attorney who could probably go a long way to, like, again, laying out some of the details as to what practical action steps would need to be taken to establish a land trust here in
Right.
Illinois.
Okay. I know that we're coming upon 7:30 almost, but we're gonna try to let you guys take a peek at what Tay has here.
Yeah. So hopefully I'll be able to share my screen. But so volume 4, like I mentioned, is on the back burner until I can find another blockbuster, and the time is ticking. Every day these guys get older, the ones that are still around. That installment is finished, all but for that interview. It's mandatory. What I'm gonna put out in the next few weeks is the 5th installment. The idea was to create a sort of through line from the early days of white flight and disinvestment to the few economic opportunities that our young people have available to them now. And, say what you want about it, the drug game is, to too many of our youth, a viable economic opportunity. And so the 5th installment is about the drug game, the multiple levels. I talked to former and a couple of current dealers who lay it out for us in business terms. I talk to former and current users who talk about the Chicago drug market, from the perspective of consumers. And then, I talk to, people in the Department of Public Health. I talk to, there's an interview with some law enforcement personnel. Got a really great interview with Cook County Sheriff Tom Dart. But actually, the suggestion to Steve, I got an interview with Representative LaShawn Ford. I just finished shooting that a few days ago to address the sort of political angle. I spent 24 hours with a recovering heroin addict who is on the right path now and has a really incredible story to tell. I spent about 12 hours with a couple of addicts who, walked me through the day in the life of, an opioid addict. And so I try my best to cover it from multiple angles. The only thing I'm missing now, before I put it out, I need to shoot an interview with the sister Andrea Barthwell, who actually worked in the Bush administration and is a member of the International Task Force on Drug Policy. But I'll be interviewing her within the next couple of weeks. And I'm supposed to be spending some time in the drug recovery ward and the ER over at St. Anthony's Hospital, sort of get a really sort of on the ground view of how medical practitioners are dealing with the opioid epidemic. The very final piece is some time that I'm going to spend on the street with the Four Corner Hustlers. There was a recent breakup of a open air drug market in West Garfield Park that they ran, and all indications are that it's anything but shut down. So I want their perspective. Anyway, I put together a little 3.5 minute teaser. I'm gonna see if I can share this with you all. Share screen. Yeah.
It's another screen. Okay, hold on.
A table.
Go ahead, you saying? Okay, here we go. I got you.
Yeah, we had Steve Brilliant, who lost it.
Yeah, hold on. Here we go.
Let me know when you're
I
ready.
see it. See, add the stream. Add the stream. There you go.
Yeah.
Yep. You see it?
Yep. Well, actually, all I can see is my screen. Can you hear it?
Can you guys hear it? You can't hear it?
No, I can't hear it.
Let's do this. Is there volume on it or something? Let me mute everybody. 1 second. Gotta mute everybody. Okay. Now let's see if we could get the sound on here. How do we turn the sound
Can you hear it? Yeah.
No, maybe I just have to turn it up. No. That's odd.
No.
Still can't hear. Let me see. Let me go to my.
Maybe you might have to share it.
Yeah.
Since you're the host.
Come on over and see if you can go.
Right,
Okay. Edit.
For a second.
Oh, I just lost it. Go
No,
ahead.
stop sharing. Let's see.
Yeah.
Switch chairs? Okay.
Yep. Let's switch them up. This is some stuff you want to see. But or someone asked Felicia said it was the Leaders Network that's starting the credit union, and of course that's the ministers, the Westside ministers, the Leaders Network. I think Reverend Hatch, Reverend Ackley, Miller, I think is also involved. Millers. So supposedly there is a credit union in the making or in the works, or they've already established it. I have to dig in a little deeper to find out more.
First off, can anybody actually see this?
Can you guys see this?
Yeah, you can see the screen.
Okay. Can you hear anything? No?
No, I don't think they can hear anything.
Can see it, but can't hear it.
You see what you can hear?
You must share your sound to the video, and it's red. So you gotta share your sound to the video. I'm seeing it on your screen, it's red, like the sound. It's a red button, so if you're not sharing your sound to the video.
So we might have to open it up.
No?
Uh-oh. You gotta mute them.
Mm.
Let's see. Maybe we should, if we turn off the speaker here, turn this speaker off. Let's see what happens. Hold on. Man, that's over there.
Let me see. All right. I gotta have it.
You got it? Okay, so turn it back off here. So
If they can hear what's happening in this room,
yeah.
then okay. So what I'll do,
I'm gonna mute this right here, so we can turn this back on. Whose keys are those? Keys are doing it. There we go. All right, let's see what we can get. Hey, we got a way he's gonna hack it in somehow.
let me see here. Quick and do hack.
So we're gonna do like video on one and sound on another. Okay.
You can put URL for it in the chat.
Yeah. You said put the URL in the chat. Here.
Okay.
We're doing all this
Let's
kids.
try to sync this up here. Let me switch with you one more time.
Okay, go ahead.
Barry, you gotta keep your mic up, you're gonna talk.
Yeah, what's the kids? We got a lot of
They are
kids.
having a great time.
Oh, that's the neighbors.
Okay, you guys can see the screen. Should be black.
Mm-hmm. They got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, I'm the black screen. Now see pictures.
But I'm not educated.
Code switches production.
I speak from here. I think, I think the main problem in this country now is drugs.
My name is Tiffany Truesdell. I am the ER manager here at the hospital.
Users, it's doing it. And drug now, you understand, it's so poor. It's simply supposed to be mad to the point that even thinking about.
It was kind of like a perfect storm. We had COVID, which really disrupted supply chain lines.
In the beginning, so slowly, interference. I see drug me back then. 85, 90. You had 30 dope.
When it seemed the Colombians got into the market, it seemed they had the same outlook as they do with cocaine. Why the market was crazy.
So at the same time, you have the cartels recognizing that instead of growing poppies and then going through the process of creating heroin, they can just synthesize fentanyl. And then it's so tiny in comparison to what, so then you can smuggle it. They're making more money off of, per shipment via weight.
It's been a huge increase in overdoses, more so because it's not pure. It's not what it was back in the day.
When greed set in, everybody got greedier and greedier. So the product would be hit more and more. And the principles of the game began to change.
You have to be careful because these young guys are like 16, 17 years old. They are experimenting. They're experimenting. That's why so many people are dying.
Higher risk for a higher reward. So, it's a quicker reward. It's like a rush. It's like a high. You get high real quick. Your money comes so fast, it's a rush. Yeah.
So many people trying to sell narcotics because it's so profitable on the west side. It keeps popping up as three, but that's not fentanyl.
Definitely because of location, we do get the influx of the drug abuse. I mean, it's the west side. West side is known to have hardcore dealers, hardcore gangbangers that comes with that, and drugs.
It's reported to being 400 to 6,000 times stronger than morphine. It's been used as a chemical weapon, unsurprisingly. The only two other sources of fentanyl that are more potent than this one would be carfentanil and O-methanol, which almost kind of reads to me as, oh my God.
My way of thinking, I'm not a religious person. I believe the end for mankind is in his hand. That's why I truly believe.
That's it?
Yep.
Okay, switch it out. Switch back real quick. There we go. All right. Back on the screen. I can see myself. So you guys get a little bit of the little taste of this last episode or newest episode of this West Side Stories.
Where can we catch the series at? You like it 1, 2, where are you putting these at on YouTube?
Yeah, it was supposed to be on WTTW, but I don't know what happened. They called me at the beginning of January, all excited after they saw Paradise Lost, and said, we want to co-produce this with you, for WTTW. And of course, I was excited about that, but I haven't heard from them since. They were supposed to ink a deal with me at the end of this past January, and I haven't heard from them since. So I'm just, still doing it independent and uploading it to YouTube. I just want to share it with people. You know what I'm saying? So it don't matter to me how people see it, so long as they see it.
Yeah, I was just reading some of the comments here. Um, I wish they definitely have to see the other episodes.
Oh yeah,
You got to see the other episodes to get to where we're at now. Um, much of it is a reality for which we've already lived, but there's just pieces that we just don't understand how they go together based over time and place. And if you look at this whole series, West Side Stories, you'll kind of hear it from multiple directions, and you'll see how these things go together to create this puzzle. Like I said, for me, um, it's a reflection. It's a reflection back on, oh, that's why that was like that. Or, oh, that's why this is like this. And we live it every day, so we don't really understand why these things are playing out the way they are. And what can we do to change it? That's the key. What can we do to change it? I mean, we heard from Deontay that we should pool together, or if not pool together, at least buy property on the west side. Buy it, rent it, live in it, hold on to
Hold
it.
on to it. So long as you don't sell it, hold it.
Hold on. So, any remarks?
But see,
sure, go ahead, Paul.
yeah, see, that's why I had told you about it'd be good to have one of your Zoom meetings on all the different organizations that's trying to do the same exact thing, that they can come together and have one place to meet, and you just have it like on this platform that you can know what each one's trying to do, because everybody's trying to do the same thing. 50 different organizations got the same thing and they're not talking to one another. So you need to like pull that together, and that will be one of the proposals about bringing this bank and credit union together. But if all these different on the west side, they don't know about one another. Everybody's doing almost the same exact thing. So like I was talking to you a while back, that you just have a Zoom for all these organizations and bring them together on one platform, and they'll be able to discuss that, so they can get together and then they can correlate together and make it one thing. But because there's too many different ones trying to do the same exact thing.
Well, I think the Leaders Network, Felicia was saying that they're actually doing a credit union. I briefly heard about it some years ago or something like that, but I don't know where it's at right now. So that's one thing I could reach out to some of the ministers in the Leaders Network to find out where that's at. But I kind of disagree that a lot of the organizations are trying to do the same things. They're trying to do some things, and the only reason I say the same thing because a lot of them getting grants for this to do things, and I'm almost sure the grants aren't the same things for different organizations. I would hope not. And what we're talking about, I definitely know ain't nobody giving no money to build their own destiny like that. So this is a little bit outside the box of people empowering themselves, because these organizations ain't out here trying to tell you how to empower yourself financially. I can't tell you one organization out here that's doing that. And I've been around here a long time. I mean, that's the key. If I can think of somebody, I'm definitely gonna pull them to the carpet and say, "Can you work with us on this?" But I can't think of an organization that's doing that. I tried doing it with what was it called? I can't remember the name of it. Making money for millennials and others, well, which we were doing a series of teaching people how to buy real estate, primarily 2 to 4 units, so that they can have something to sustain themselves with if they didn't work, or build some capital from it and live in it if they needed to. And we did that at the end of the pandemic when things were looking really bad as far as buying, but then it all went up within 6 to 9 months. And it was like property. Really, the market, the interest rates were down. Now the feds are trying to stabilize everything, which really means they're just trying to grab the money back. All the money that's out there, they're just trying to grab it back so they can have control.
That's the liquidity in the market.
Yeah, but really, you know what they're doing? They're really trying to get people to work. Mm-hmm. If we grab the money back, they got to go back to work. And we got a group of people out here now that ain't talking about work. For some reason, you see, how can we be in a recession and then you see everywhere help wanted signs, and you hear that the unemployment numbers are like 3%. 3% is bad unemployment, meaning that you don't have enough people to in the workplace. 4% is good unemployment. It's a good number. Once you start dropping below 4, it starts to become like the people that are not working, which is the indigent, the elderly, that are retired, um, and so forth. But I don't know. I don't know. I've never seen anything like this. A lot of jobs out there, but we're in a recession. So
Well, usually on something like that, wages go up when the unemployment is low. There's lots of jobs.
The thing is, wages have gone up technically, but it just haven't kept pace with inflation.
right.
Yeah. And Steve, I have an update on the credit union.
Okay. What you got?
Washington Post had an article in December 21 saying that Marshall had to increase every $100,000.
Okay. Okay. So they are doing it. That may be the direction. Why reinvent the wheel when we already got something rolling? But I have to dig into that because I haven't heard much more about it. I just kind of, like I said, briefly heard something of it, a murmur of it some years ago. But that was a few years ago. Should we have more than 100,000 in a few years? I mean, what do you got? 100 people in it with $1,000 in it?
Is it just church leaders? Is it just pastors? Can anybody get in it? So what is the criteria?
Right. What's the criteria? That's what we need to ask. What's the criteria and get the message out. Speaking of messaging, what do we have? We got quite a few things coming up soon. I know we got Congressman Davis's back to school parade. I think that's on the 20th of August. They're doing a special time capsule interview, I think, over at the North Branch of the Austin Library, where they're actually interviewing people that have lived in Austin for at least 25 years or more, and they're going to do a mural on the individuals. That's currently being organized. What else do we have? Anybody got anything they want to add? Or you have any questions to Deontay Wilson regarding his whole West Side story?
Have you tried to get sponsored for your movie?
I actually just got a grant. I just got a grant from the city of Chicago, actually. So I'll be able to do a few more things. And on the strength of Paradise Lost, the last installment I just did, recently was accepted into Columbia Film School Chicago. So I'll be starting there this fall, if all things go according to plan, and that'll open up some more doors for me in the industry, broadly speaking.
So you'll be starting as
We go to a film student.
a student. That's kind of going back for you.
Gotta go, yeah.
You
Well,
should be teaching it.
See, I'm trying to undo the mistake I made in my 20s. When I graduated college, I should have gone to film school right after. Instead, I went to drama school. I went to the American Conservatory Theater out in San Francisco.
Right.
When I should have gone to film school.
I hear you. Hey, a step up is a step up. Yeah. Every little bit makes that much better, bigger difference. Anyone else got anything else to add regarding the show's content today?
Yes. Kay, I have a question for you.
Who's that, Barry?
I don't think, yeah.
My man Barry, how you been, man?
Yeah, a long time. Here's my question. From what I see, this little snippet you just showed, and from what I recall, when you first showed it to me, I'm just wondering, you mentioned a community, something like a community bank or a land trust. Oh, and by the way, I have the contact info. It was Illinois Service Federal at 4619 King Drive. So it was just north of 43rd Street.
Hmm. And this was years ago or just recently?
Well, in the 80s they were there. It was a very modern looking bank on the east side of the street. In any case, and Norman Williams was the president, and he also owned a funeral home in Grand Boulevard.
Right.
But Kay, my question is that you mentioned the idea of the bank, and the other thing that comes to my mind is tourism of the west side would increase business and people coming into the community. And I'm wondering whether you have any footage that could help promote the west side in Medicine.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I mean, I've been working on this series for 2.5 years now, and I have literally terabytes worth of all kinds of stuff that I've accumulated. Now a library that I'm still adding to. So I got some stuff. Yeah.
Any other questions, comments, concerns, or any messages anyone want to put out? That's one thing we like to do. If anyone has any message or anything. How about you, Ella? Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here, but I don't have anything else to
No,
add.
I was going to ask you about our neighbor. I wanted to know if you knew any more about her funeral or anything. Ella? Yes.
Hazel?
Yeah, Hazel.
Yeah, Hazel funeral is on the 6th at Taylor Funeral Home on 79th Street.
Oh, wow. Okay.
10 to 11, 11 to 12.
I got you. Okay. Got you. All right. Okay. Anybody else? Any comments, concerns, or? Sure, go ahead. Sure, Ms. J.
Can you hear me?
Yes, indeed. I hear
Yeah,
you.
how you doing?
All right, yourself?
Okay, I was asking you if you knew anybody that wanted to do the energy program.
Right.
The pastor at St. Martin Episcopal Church have a site. Does anybody want to do that program? Yeah, that's the site that they can work out of.
Right. I got you. I put the word out. I told a couple people, but they haven't responded back with a yay or nay, a yes or no.
And one more thing.
Sure, go ahead. Take your time.
I still have jobs. I have Hostess Bakery. I have Freeman Seating, and I have Amazon.
Okay.
So if you know any relatives or neighbors or anybody that might be looking for work and want to work, I have those 3 companies.
Okay, sounds good. We'll do. I'm sure those out there heard that. Ms. Jacobs has a direct line for jobs in those 3 places, 3 entities: Hostess, Amazon, and Freedman Seating, all of which are on the west side.
Yeah, west side.
For sure. Anybody else? Okay. Well,
Yes, Steve,
sure.
Steve, I lost connection just as Dave was saying, answering about making a course video. He said he had lost of footage.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yep.
Is he still there?
Yeah,
Yes.
he's here.
Yeah.
He's here.
Lots of stuff. Yeah.
I'm surprised you
You
can't
know,
see
you
him.
know where I'm at, man. You can come by anytime. We can, kick back, pop up in a cold one and
Can you see me?
check it out.
Yes.
You can see me, but you can't see him. Okay.
Kay, I wonder, let me see, I may have your number.
Mm-hmm.
I'll forward it to you, Barry, if you need it.
Okay, so, Kay, let's talk back home.
Okay, sounds good.
Please give me the information for the jobs. Is there direct contact info? Definitely, I could give you that, and I could give it to you. Ms. Jacobs.
Okay, I may have it, I'm not sure.
Okay. Well, if anyone else out there have anything in conclusion, we were almost rolling up on the 8 o'clock hour.
This was a very good topic. I'm just happy to see someone doing this, filming of this. And, I wish you luck in your endeavors, and I would definitely be watching them and, searching them out. But I found this very information, this very, striking about how, everything came about. I mean, it's a history lesson for me.
Oh, you have to see you have to actually see the documentary. When you see it, piece by piece, hearing it from people that lived through it and telling their side of it, what they saw and how it happened, you're gonna see how it all unfolded.
And, Barbara?
Yeah.
You had mentioned wanting people to come together with all the different organizations. So, I'm wondering what we can talk about.
Okay. Steve got my number. Steve. I thought Steve I don't have about this particular subject.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
Yes,
That's what I
indeed.
do is talk to them about organizations coming together and just try to get on one accord and just see what we can do. Because there's a lot of talk out there. I'm a person about action, so
Well, that's why.
I just want people to be about the action. And I don't live in Chicago no more, but I still give back to Chicago.
But that's why it takes the people. It takes the people, and we keep talking about organizations. Yeah, it's cool to have the organizations, but if the organizations ain't got no people, you got to go where the people are, and that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to make sure that we got people power, And then you got to, again, everybody got to think about this. A lot of these organizations get money for the things they do. So when do the people come in and the poo-poo go out, because there's a lot of crap behind this, a lot of it, So anybody else before I conclude? Yeah, DeAndre couldn't make it today. He's working on this dissertation for his PhD, so he's trying to dive into it and get it done. And we appreciate all the efforts he's always giving the organization, help, and the people in the community. Again, it's all about the people. Again, I don't mind people being selfish when it comes to their community. Be selfish about your community. Make sure that you keep it beautified. Make sure that you keep it safe. Make sure that you keep it up and coming for the youth, that are coming in behind us. And as DeAndre would always say, they didn't want to give us a seat at the table, so we had to create our own. That's why we want to thank everybody and welcome them to Northwest Austin Council. And I'd like to thank Deontay Wilson. Again, we're going to have him on again because he got a lot of different things, episodes and things that I'm sure he wants to, give us more info on. And we definitely need to look at how Lawndale, Garfield, Austin, and what they call West Humboldt, where that came in, I don't know. How we all flowing together now and where we're going to flow to. So at this point, you all, I want to say good night. Good night,
Good
all.
night. Thank you. Thank you, Steve. Good night.
Good night. Bye now. Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot, but we have to look a little bit beyond where we at today.
Beneath the surface.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, you got a question? Go ahead. I guess she just says thank you. Shut it down.
Oh, thank you. First, go ahead.